What happens when chefs want to put food on your plate, but then the government gets in the way? Yeah, let's talk about that. Instead of focusing on winning arguments, we're teaching the basic fundamentals of sales and marketing and how we can use them to win in the world of politics, teaching you how to meet people where they're at on the issues they care about. Welcome to The Brian Nichols Show. Well, hey there, folks. Brian Nichols here on another fun-filled episode of The Brian Nichols Show. I am, as always, your humble host, joining you from our lovely Cardio Miracle Studios here in sunny Eastern Indiana. The Brian Nichols Show is powered by the best heart health supplement in the world, Cardio Miracle. If you want to learn more about Cardio Miracle and all of the amazing benefits like lowering your resting heart rate, lowering your blood pressure while improving your pump at the gym, stick around. We'll talk about that more in today's episode. Also, if you want to support any of our sponsors here on the show, if you're watching the video version of the show, over my shoulder, you see those QR codes flashing by. Use your your smartphone app, scan that QR code, should bring you right over to our amazing sponsors with coupon codes and discounts already applied at checkout. But with that being said, let's talk about folks who are trying to sell you some stuff, and that is some chefs. And what is this? Why is government getting in the way of them actually putting some pretty darn good food on your plate? To discuss all that and more, we're actually digging into an article over on National Review, and joining us is the author of said article, Noah Gould. Noah, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you on the show, man. I know we were talking here beforehand. This article that you wrote over at National Review definitely got my spidey senses tingling. The government getting in the way of some good food. My former 385-pound self was weeping because everybody loves some good food. But Noah, before we dig into that, do us a favor, introduce yourself here to the Brian Nichols Show audience, and then we'll transition into our conversation around what is the government doing trying to stop us getting some access to some pretty darn good chow. Noah, floor is yours.
Yeah, well, really excited to talk about this topic. My writing focuses on kind of the underlying cultural factors underneath economic and political phenomenon. I work at the Acton Institute for the Study of Religion and Liberty in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I'm also a contributor for Young Voices, so excited to talk about this.
Good stuff, man. All right, well, let's jump right into your article. Michigan chefs want to put food on your plate. The government, however, is getting in the way. Noah, what's going on here? Why is the government getting in the way from these chefs up in Michigan wanting to put some delicious, scrumptious food on patrons' plates?
Yeah, so food is a really important area for entrepreneurs because the barriers for entry are generally low if we set aside the regulatory issues. So everyone kind of has a grandma's recipe or mom's recipe that you think you'd love to share. And so this is a really great intro to a lot of people who want to be entrepreneurs. What I found in extensive interviews with different entrepreneurs was there are barriers to them starting and then specifically scaling their businesses. And so there's pretty complex rules and laws around this. And what I found was the cottage laws, which provide an entry point, really aren't cutting it to provide easy ways for people to start businesses that will really create variety and flexibility, different types of foods that we all want on our plate.
Cottage laws, that cottage cheese, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, so that's a way for states to create simpler regulations around people who want to just make food in their house or at a smaller scale. So if you fall in certain categories and then you have a kind of simpler foods that are shelf stable at normal temperatures, then they'll waive certain regulations. Now, there are caps on how much you can sell before you hit other types of regulations in cottage food law.
Tell us more. What do those look like?
Yeah, so say you sell over $25,000 of food, then you would hit another set of regulations. And by studies of the University of Michigan, there's a center there that studies this. There's 6 different regulatory agencies that could regulate you depending on the scale, what type of food, the venue that you're selling it. So one entrepreneur that I profile extensively in this article is Stephanie Rucker, who started a business doing vegan catering. So a little bit different, not everyone's cup of tea, but a niche in the market that she wants to serve. And so she can prepare food in a commercial kitchen, and there's a bunch of different kind of nonprofits that will help startups have a commercial kitchen. And then she can bring it to the venue and sell it as is. But even if she wants to just say as much as butter a piece of toast on site, any sort of preparation on site falls under a different license that she would have to get. So she already has one license, but if she wanted to do any sort of prep on site, different license. So that's a big barrier for her, a cost barrier, because she is a very small business and has thin profit margins. And that scaling, which is of course really important for people to be able to do this full time, to be able to have a successful long-term business, not just a kind of short-term startup, that scaling is really difficult for her. Other people that I talked to, some who wanted to be off the record for fear of losing their license, had all sorts of other issues as well in specifically scaling the business. That seems to be a sticking point over and over.
So what's the logic? I mean, listen, I talk about the danger of do something politics, but like almost every single law that's out there has been tossed onto the rolls because somebody said, we must do something out there, right? For whatever issue they see. They're like, let's just slap a law on it. So what was the logic behind these cottage food laws? And then to your point, like, you have one license that you've gotten to make the food at home, and then wait, no, you can't actually finish the food at the location that you're going to because now you need a different license. Like, what's the logic there for this?
Yeah, so I think there's going to be a bunch of different types of logic for the different rules. Right now, it's kind of a patchwork. So the cottage laws are a good thing. I mean, that is good to ease regulations, to have small time kind of mom and pop startups be able to have an easier entry. But that's going to be for things like selling at a farmer's market or selling kind of small time. So it really is a patchwork of national, county, state, local laws that maybe individually have a logic to them of why they were put in place. We could think about basic health and safety rules, right? Okay, we maybe want some of those, but the complexity of, say you want to sell in a store, you need to create a document saying standard operating procedures of exactly how you're going to do every step of the preparation. And it's not clear if you get that standard operating procedure document not approved by something like the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, say they deny your application. It's not always clear why they're denying it, right? So they want to have everything. This is classic kind of measurable. They want everything to be on paper. They want it to be documented. But there really isn't any enforcement after you get that document approved that you're still even following that exact letter by letter steps of how you
checking
do
a box.
Process. Yeah, it's checking a box for them. They have a piece of paper filed. They like that. It has a certain coverage for that bureaucrat. But as far as what is a good standing operating procedure, what is a bad one, and then just think of the sheer variety of different types of foods. That's one of the joys of food, right? Is the variety, the human ingenuity, the traditions, different cultures coming together. All of that is what makes food amazing. That's not something that's easy to have a document that says, here's exactly what's going to be approved and what's not approved. So it really ends up being opaque or up to one bureaucrat to approve or not approve.
So you mentioned entrepreneurs, obviously getting hit hardest with these silly laws. But like, let's dig into some of the real pain here. You mentioned scaling. I'm sure there's a lot of other red flags that pop up from a business owner perspective, and you've done the dirty work going out and actually interviewing these business owners. Noah, fill us in. Like, what are the responses from boots on the ground folks out there actually having to deal with these goofball laws?
Yeah, so one of the things that's happened that's really interesting is that there are a bunch of different kind of nonprofits that have started up that are trying to ease some of this pain. And so you have things like Spring GR is a local, they have a commercial kitchen, and they're helping to kind of ease some of this pain that entrepreneurs are feeling. The problem then is, if we need a nonprofit to kind of ease the pain that bureaucrats are kind of imposing, what's the best way? Is that really the best way to kind of solve this problem of too much regulation, too much oversight? So the pain is pretty personal if you think about.
You work out, you lift heavy, you're eating clean, but if you're not seeing better pumps, better endurance, or faster recovery, It's probably because you're missing a critical piece. So your body depends on nitric oxide to help push blood, oxygen, and nutrients into your muscles. And when your NO levels drop off, or if you're not maximizing them, it's like training with the brakes on. Less oxygen, weaker pumps, longer recovery. You're doing the work, but your body simply isn't keeping up. And that's where Cardio Miracle comes in. It's an advanced nitric oxide supplement loaded with L-citrulline, L-arginine, organic beetroot, CoQ10, and no junk. Just pure ingredients that synergistically work to increase blood flow, power your workouts, and accelerate your recovery without stimulants or synthetic BS. So if you want to make sure every set counts, just click the link in the show notes, scan that little QR code over my shoulder, or visit cardiomiracle.com/TBNS to feel the difference. And by the way, when you click that link, your discount will automatically be applied. Just look for Shopping with Brian Nichols at the top of your homepage. One more time, that's cardiomiracle.com/TBNS. And now, let's get back to the show.
Specific business owners who want to be able to give up their day job, and they want to be able to give up, this other source of income to be able to focus primarily on this business that they feel really passionate about. And this provides, a problem for them of, I've heard one entrepreneur saying, think about a boat approaching the coast of a lake. You're on this boat, and the decision is when to jump off that boat, when to leave your day job to be able to take over this other thing full time. You don't want to jump off in the middle of the lake, but also you don't want to jump off somewhere on shore when the boat has already landed. And this is the dilemma of a lot of entrepreneurs. And so this scaling becomes a really unique problem for them because they want to be able to invest fully in this. And I've talked to multiple entrepreneurs that are feeling that pain point. And sometimes they just have to give up this business if they're not able to overcome the regulatory barriers, aren't able to check all those boxes, and they just have to give up that's what is essentially a failed side hustle.
And Noah, you mentioned like the different thresholds as businesses started to earn more money. This might be my layman's perspective, but like that seems almost backwards, right? Because I would think as a business grows, they're going to have more revenue coming in. Therefore, that revenue can now start going towards improving things, starting to make things better internally, from your operations to the processes to all that in between, the ingredients that you're getting. Maybe it's more higher quality ingredients. So I would almost just go out on a limb and say and I'm not in favor of the regulation, but if you were trying to be logically consistent, you'd be like, oh, well, we want people who are higher risk to therefore have more of a barrier to enter into the marketplace, right? So it almost seems like even by the government's own logic, these laws just don't make sense.
Yeah, and I think that's the patchwork problem that I brought up earlier. These multiple different agencies that are kind of overseeing. Another problem is, say you are creating a food that's prepackaged that's going to be sold in a store, right? You can do that at the farmer's market with very limited regulations. But then as soon as you want to try to get into a grocery store at scale, that's another barrier that I've talked to people who have had that problem of, I need to get this document approved that's saying exactly how I'm making it. Yeah, it is somewhat backwards of this is already kind of a tested product and there's some success there and they want to grow it and sell in a grocery store. Now, an added layer is if you're going to sell in a grocery store, the regulations aren't going to be even enough, kind of fulfilling those regulations aren't going to be enough for a grocery store to let you in. They're going to want third parties as well, non-governmental organizations, to also kind of sign up on your product. So even without kind of these regulations, there are other health and safety checks that grocery stores want. And so there's just kind of multiple hurdles piled on top of each other that you need to meet.
Now, Noah, again, this might be my layman's perspective here leading to this question, but why? Why would these grocery stores want third-party checks? Is not the government's word enough, or the government bureaucracy is enough?
Yeah, exactly. That has to beg the question. When we have
and beg I shall.
Exactly. Yeah. The kind of basic health and safety, I think this is kind of intuitive to most people. We want oversight in the food that we consume because we don't want to have to do research on every single jar that we're putting on our shelf. We want to go to a grocery store and have kind of a reasonable kind of expectation that it will be safe. And so that's kind of the basic reason for these regulations. And if there was a streamlined process for that, that's pretty reasonable. But if telling us something about these regulations not working or not being enough, if the grocery store also wants that additional, maybe multiple third party authentication, right? Because you can, like we talked about the document that you need to fill out that says what your procedure is. You can fill out that document, you can get it passed, but there really isn't oversight that you're consistently doing that. So that's what the grocery store wants, some kind of other checks to make sure they have care for their customers. They care about their reputation, especially if you think about larger chains. They have a huge amount of risk of putting anything on the shelf.
Yeah.
And so they want multiple types of assurance that you are a safe producer.
So I'm just going to ask the question, why do we need the government version of this then? If the grocery stores are already saying, okay, you got the seal of approval from, the Department of Health from New York State, okay, or Michigan or wherever it may be. All right, great, there you go. Check that box. Like, why do we need that then? If that's not even what these different entities care about, like, what's the point?
Yeah, I think it's on the burden of the bureaucrats of showing us why that's needed. Each rule should be able to be justified. And it also needs to be clear what the guidelines are, concise, and provide a framework, but not kind of overly burdensome. And so that's, I think, on the person making the rule to defend that. And if making a rule off of every exception, that's not a really good way to govern. So making a rule that is kind of can be over all food industry, okay, there can be some minimum, but I think that the burden needs to be on the person making the rule to say why it's not going to do more harm than good.
Well, and by the way, you hit the nail on the head here with the example you outlined. Like, we do not make rules for the exception. And I always hear this too. Like, I don't mean to just completely derail to a different topic, but this goes into the abortion conversation, right? You'll have folks who will go to every exception or every like very specific use case of a potential issue. Like, well, what if, the lady, the mother was a victim of rape or incest? It's like, okay, well, let's just assume that that's correct. Does that change anything else? No. Oh, okay. So you're just using this as an example to try to either, in this case, keep something legal or to make something illegal. So it feels like this is the same kind of failed logic of, well, there's this one example where something negative has happened in the past, and that exception to the rule therefore becomes the rule. It just seems so goofball, Noah.
Yeah, or another example of that would be the recent TSA rollback of taking off your shoes, right? That was a rule based on one attempt, right? And then how many millions of people have to take their shoes off going through kind of security, and how many years does it take? Just 2025 now, over 20 years that millions of people had to go through this rule for them to realize, okay, maybe we shouldn't have made a rule off of one exception, one attempted attack, which, that's another case of the psychology of people being very scared of one thing can overwhelm the logic of, hey, is it really worth the extra kind of hours and hours of wasting people's time? It seems like such a trivial thing, but added up, it's a huge amount of waste and kind of unneeded burden on people.
Well, an elephant in the room too. I just think in general, people really don't trust these bureaucratic agencies, and one look no further than what we've been going through in a national perspective when it comes to the FDA allowing these insane like additives and these dyes to our food. Like, people see that and they're like, oh, well, hold on, time out. Is it safe? Are we sure? And the FDA is like, yeah, sure, it's fine enough, right? It's generally accepted as safe. So like, there's this green light to potentially put not so great things into our food, and the FDA is just giving this green light. But then you go to the microcosms, to your point, the use cases that are like the one-offs versus being the generalized rule, and we see those one-offs being pulled to the side. It's like, well, hold on, there's no logical consistency here in how the government is applying these arbitrary standards. And then you look a little bit deeper and you're like, okay, well, hold on, is it a matter of the government picking winners and losers, or favorites? In this case, we're going to pick Post cereal and Kellogg and all these big brands that are out there, and we're going to give them the love and attention they want and pay for being real. But then to mom and dad's startup food truck or whatever, nah, we can't do that, right? We're not going to give you the benefit of the doubt because we don't trust you. And by don't trust you, you don't give us enough money. Is that what it looks like in real life?
I think there is this missing middle, and that becomes kind of a theme across the economy. Is that missing, right? Food laws, you can enter. There's some rules that allow you to enter, and then the big guys, they can overcome the barriers through just money and scale, right? But that middle, those I think can be some of the most interesting businesses for consumers, as far as solving a problem, able to be consistent, exist over a longer period of time. There's all these benefits to that middle, and that's what we're missing in this conversation and others, right? There's we miss out on that size of business, because if you have enough money and lobbyists and VC dollars and all of these things, you can overcome. The regulations really aren't going to stop your business if you're big enough, because you can hire an army of consultants. But if you're too small, that scale, that's really difficult because you don't have money to sink into overcoming these regulations.
So one of my favorite YouTubers out there is this Gen Zer named Ryan Trahan, which I don't know if you ever saw him, but man, you want to feel old, just be a millennial, like a middle-aged millennial, and watch a Gen Zer. You're like, man, I need my cane. But he's going around the country right now, and he's doing this 50 state in 50 days tour. He's actually, I think he was just in Michigan, believe it or not, but he's going around the country and he's trying to raise money for St. Jude. But one of the things he's doing is he's actually stopping at every Target or 7-Eleven or CVS, I think it is, in the United States to buy his own product that he's been putting out there, which is called Joyride. And Joyride's supposed to be this healthy alternative to, healthier alternative, right, to the tried and true candy brands that are out there. Your Hershey's, your Sour Patch Kids, the gummy worms, all that stuff. And his whole idea is cleaner ingredients, no artificial food dyes, natural sweeteners, natural sugar. And oh, by the way, it's like a fourth of, or 40% of the calories and sugar that the big guys usually have. And the fact that he's been able to have the success he's having is amazing, right? But also Ryan was able to build up this little army over on YouTube where he's got, I would say some good disposable income to fight this fight from a regulatory standpoint, but he also has a consumer base that is primed and ready to buy, not just from his subscribers, but also people who in general have been like, hey, I don't want food with the dyes in it. I don't want this garbage in my body. So to your point, right, when you see that there are these disruptors in the marketplace, in the best of perspectives that want to come in and start doing things differently, I mean, this is how we inevitably start to make real substantive changes. But if we go back to square one here, and we have these cottage food laws, or we have these different draconian bureaucracies going out and dictating who can and can't do certain things based on scope or scale, like that is where it does start to push away any alternatives in the marketplace and just leaves us with, the same, hey, you want vanilla ice cream or chocolate ice cream, right? That's your pick. You don't get the plethora of strawberry or cookie dough or moose track. You have to pick one of the two options. So, I mean, this just goes full circle to the conversation here, Noah. Like, if we want to see things get better in the marketplace, truly like get better and have better options, the number one thing we as consumers should actually be saying is, hey, government, get out of the way. If you're a small business owner with a handful of team members, but a big vision, I'm talking maybe 3, 5, maybe 10 folks tops, most phone vendors will either ignore you or try to upsell you into something bloated and expensive. Yeah, been there. But Level 365, they get it. No minimum seats, no pressure to scale before you're ready. Just simple, powerful phone tools built to grow when you do. And yeah, it's still month to month, so no worries about getting locked into something that doesn't fit you next month. It's not about company size, it's about finding the right fit. That's what Level 365 nails.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned, I think this is newer startups. I know you're a marketing guru as well, but I mean, there's this authenticity that they bring, and then built audiences. That's key to break through the noise, and that may help some people survive. But there's incentives for the people for it to kind of just stay the same and new laws to be added on. And that's just making that kind of web that they have to navigate as entrepreneurs worse and worse. So I think it is about kind of consumers and average citizenry saying, hey, let's ask some deeper questions about are these things really necessary?
Mm-hmm.
There is a building consensus, I think, around some of these nonprofits that are helping start the conversation. And if they can not only help entrepreneurs overcome the regulations, but take it a step further and question the actual regulations themselves, that will be a really positive move, right? You can kind of help people navigate the system, but if you can then take that the next step, that would be fantastic. And so I do think that people need to ask questions. Is this necessary? And ask secondary questions. Okay, can you prove that this is necessary, not just kind of hand waving around health and safety? Because that communicates to something in us very basically, but we need to go beyond that to have common sense regulations.
Now, we're talking about solutions here. I love it. We are not just about identifying problems. We're about offering very real, tangible solutions. And one tangible solution I'd like to toss your way is from a lawmaker standpoint. A lot of these rules, these regulations, these laws that have been put in place, they were, put in place sometimes 5 years ago, sometimes 15 years ago, sometimes 50 years ago, sometimes even longer than that, Noah. I forget the rule. I think it's up in like Boston area. Like you can't have a pie cooling on your windowsill on a Tuesday, right? And like there was probably a good reason back in 1842 why to have that law. The bears can smell the pie, something like that. But we're in 2025, and a lot of these rules are still, part of our daily lives. There's that old, I think it was a Twitter profile, X profile. It was a crime a day or something where it shows like how the average person commits XYZ number of crimes or felonies per day, just unknowingly, because there are so many stupid laws that are still on the books. So looking at the regulators, or in this case, the lawmakers themselves, I mean, is sunset provisions for laws to say, hey, we're going to pass this law in 2025. And then in order to have this law continue after, 2035 and beyond, the lawmakers got to come back and either say, yep, this is doing what we want, thumbs up, or, not really a compelling reason to keep this goofball law in place. Like, is that a solution? Is there other solutions that you've seen successful? Lay it on us.
Yeah, so I don't know if I would be a fan of sunset provisions just because of there is some value in stability over time of not.
Fair.
But what regulators could do, and that's what happens to this kind of, how many crimes we all commit per day, just stop enforcing some of the things that aren't necessary. So that would be one way to solve some of it, is to kind of some of these things that are arcane or redundant, overlapping. And then there is a place for lawmakers to examine what's necessary. And if something's being done on the state and local and kind of county and national level, all these different levels, and that they overlap, are the ways that we can kind of get rid of agency functions if it's being done at another level better.
Hey, no, really quick to that though. Like, is there a risk though of from the not enforcing standpoint, because the law is still the law, right? So, I mean, we could say, hey, we get, I don't know, Jimmy John's. There we go. We get Jimmy John. He's the president or whatever. And he's doing great. He's all pro food. Actually worked out. He's all pro food, right? Because Jimmy John's a food. Whatever their slogan is, really fast or freaky fast food. Neither here nor there. I'm not getting sponsored by Jimmy John's today, unless they want to, in which case give me a call. But with that being said, right? Like if Jimmy John's was president and he was like, you know what? We're not going to enforce these silly laws anymore. We're going to open the doors for entrepreneurs. But then all of a sudden we get AOC, and she wins as president, God forbid. And she's like, actually, we're going to put these rules back in place. And all of a sudden here comes AOC and all of her, her little, Point Dexter friends are like, oh, we're going to go through and like put these laws back in place and enforce them. Like the law still is there. Now it's just back to your point, the enforcement mechanism. Like, does that not open the door to an issue you talked about earlier where we want stability? Like if we're just talking about enforcement, I mean, that opens the door, I think, to even more instability. No,
that's a great point. I think that maybe not enforcing kind of some of the more idiosyncratic or unnecessary laws, that could be a good short-term solution. So some of these, they probably do need to be fixed long-term. Those take time, and then you'll end up with interesting special interests who join the process of deregulating or trying to stop deregulating anytime you do that, right? There are other people with vested interests in not bringing in new people to the food economy. And so that anyone who's existing would rather have less startups. I mean, that's just kind of the way things are. So yeah, that's not going to be a good long-term solution for fixing the ecosystem around regulating food, but it could be a short-term kind of workaround.
Yeah, this is like the whole Mark Zuckerberg thing, right? He's like, don't give us any regulation until the point where we're the big guy in the pond, and then we can help you write the regulation, right? Like let's keep those competitors out of the ecosystem, please.
Yeah, we see this again and again in all different industries.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, I'm in the telco, business telephony and phone space. So like, I get it. I see it. We saw this back in the 90s, 2000s. Your big phone providers. You ever watch the TV show The Office, right? And Pam, Dunder Mifflin, this is Pam. Anytime you hear those phones ring, those are Cisco phones. And Cisco was like one of the brands out there. Cisco, Avaya, like they were probably 75, 80% of the market share. And then you had this wild thing called hosted VoIP, which is voice over IP, which is literally just doing what we're doing here today, but for phone calls, right? Yeah, instead of having an analog line where you did a phone call and you would call, and you had like the lady in the what were those things called? The switchboard lady, right? And you had the little cables and she'd pull it from one thing, put it into the other. That was the old analog process. Literally, you'd have to like have somebody physically wire your call to the person you're trying to get in touch with. They deregulate and they say, actually, you know what? We're going to let companies figure this out. And we went, oh, we have this thing called the internet nowadays. I wonder if we can talk over that. And here we are, right? So like that opened the door to all these vendors that are out there, the Vontages of the world, the Level 365s of the world, the Ring Centrals. You guys have probably heard these names, across the board, or, in your business world. I know my wife uses Ring Central, poor girl. I work for Level 365. So like that's for me, my own bias, but like we see that it was because you had the chance now for these market disruptors to come in and literally change the game. And now those old companies, the Ciscos, the Avayas, right? They're trying to go into this world of going to the cloud, going over the internet. So it's just funny to see how when you do have the disruption come in, it does change things. And I mean, Aldi, I love Aldi. They've been leading with this whole clean ingredients mentality for like ever. I think that's been like a mainstay of their ethos. And then as they see with this change in 2024 and beyond, with like RFK going into the HHS role, like all of a sudden they're like, maybe we're not just the weirdos that are out there. Now this is becoming mainstream. And oh, by the way, Walmart, Kroger, go through the names, Tops, they're all starting to bring out their generic versions of these products that are all more natural based, cleaner ingredients. And it's like, oh, it wasn't because the government just passed a rule or a new law or a new regulation that made this better. It was because we had market forces already being the change that we want to see. And what happens if Aldi starts to steal some of that market share from Kroger? You don't think that they're going to get a little pissy, right? I use Kroger because they're literally across the road from Aldi. So just imagine like the old like 1950s, one business owner standing out there yelling at the other business owner, like, come get my watermelons. No, my watermelons. Like this is where we're seeing things actually get better. So I say all that, Noah, this has been a great conversation. Do us a favor, bring us home. Like, where do you see this going? You obviously wrote your article here over at National Review based on what's happening up in Michigan, but this is an issue that transcends Michigan. It's something we see across the country, in many ways, shapes and forms impact folks. But where do you see this actually heading as we move from 2025 and beyond, 2035, 2050, wherever we may end up?
Yeah, so I love to end on this kind of idea of variety that you brought up. I brought it up at the top of our conversation, and now kind of ending on this. There's a kind of fundamental disagreement from people about where does value come from, right? Does value come from the government regulations and a kind of government investment, or does value come from individual people and the ideas that they have to solve problems? And if it's the latter, then we need to get out of the way and let people solve problems. And we see that in the food space. Certainly, this is just one example of the just true variety of ideas and amazing complexity that people are exploring and serving different customers. And so those are really two kind of fundamentally at odds pictures of where our economy should go. And so that's what the question I think we need to ask as we rethink economies that work for real people is who's creating value, where does that come from, and how can we encourage that value creation?
Well, it's funny how things happen as they do. We're recording here. I literally just got a notification on my phone here from Bloomberg. A group of 40 producers, which collectively make over 90% of the ice cream sold in the U.S., have pledged to voluntarily remove red dye 3, red dye 40, green 3, blue 1, blue 2, yellow 5, and yellow 6 by the end of 2027. I mean, I couldn't have scripted that better, right? Like that notification came through on my phone and I saw like food dye as the notification prompt. I'm like, wait, huh? Let's just see. That just happened as we're recording right here. So like that speaks to things are happening, right? People are making changes, variety, right? That is helping create even more changes. So Noah, this is a conversation I know that, unfortunately it will not end today. It will be something we continue to fight, as we move forward. And it's on us, the constituents, the consumers, to actually go out and push for the changes, not just from a legal regulatory standpoint, but also from the marketplace, the consumer side as well. So, hey, if you want to see things get better, you want to see things change, be the voice that needs to help inspire the change, or go out and make your voice loud and proud with where you spend your hard-earned dollars. So with that being said, Noah, I really appreciate you jumping on the show today. Folks, if you got some value, please go ahead and give today's episode a share. When you do, tag yours truly at B. Nichols Liberty on X, on Facebook, and on Instagram. Noah, where can folks go ahead and reach out to you if they'd like to tell you why the government should in fact be regulating all these different things, and tell you why you're so wrong and why I'm so right, or vice versa? I don't know.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from you if that's your perspective. And yeah, the article's at National Review, and then you can find me on X at Noah C. Gould 1. So it's been a pleasure. Thanks, Brian.
Absolutely. I feel like I need to paraphrase my buddy there, Ryan Trahan, right? Noah's argument was goated. That's what the kids say nowadays. Oh, I just feel like I need to go to my chiropractor just from saying that, because it hurt my back so much. No, this has been a great conversation. And by the way, folks, just like as an aside, I'm a big fan of what Ryan Trahan's doing. So if you want to go ahead and support St. Jude, he's doing some amazing fundraiser work right now. Go ahead, check out his channel there over on YouTube, Ryan Trahan. It's the 50 days. 50 states in 50 days. He's going to 50 Airbnbs, and he's raising money for St. Jude, a really good cause. I had a little cousin who had childhood cancer. That stuff sucks. So when you're able to actually help make a difference, and St. Jude is one of the best hospitals out there, please, if you could, please go ahead and make a donation. It really does help. So I'll get off my soapbox now, though. Noah, this has been a great conversation. Thank you for joining us. And folks, by the way, for the Brian Nichols Show, you can find us on your favorite podcasting platforms, video platforms, wherever that may be. Just do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that little notification bell so you don't miss a single time we have a brand new episode airing, which, by the way, we air live on Monday nights, Thursday nights, and Friday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern over on your favorite platforms like X, Facebook, and YouTube. Other than that, folks, I have enjoyed today's conversation. Brian Nichols signing off here on today's show for Noah Gould. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to The Brian Nichols Show. Find more episodes at briannicholsshow.com.